Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fierceness of the Mother Global Conference, in which we are gathering for powerful conversations with both women and men to reveal and restore the ancient feminine ways of knowing. This event is designed to open up space for all of us to reinstate the principle of the continuance of life as our top priority. And here you are invited to tune into the guidance from the feminine force of creation and learn how this force can be used to revolutionize and revitalize our world. I am your host, Jocelyn Mercado, and I am thrilled today to be speaking with Dr. John Ryan. Welcome, John. Thank you so much for being a part of this event.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So glad to have you here. And so for those who are joining us live, please go ahead and put your name and location in the chat. We would love to see where everybody's calling in from. And when you do that, in Zoom, make sure you've selected all panelists and attendees. That way everybody can see your comments. If it says all panelists only, then only Dr. John and I can see your comments. So we want everybody to see them. So let me introduce you to everybody. Dr. John Ryan is a board-certified physician, energy healer, speaker, and visionary. His life was transformed by a series of mystical events that led him to discover the validity of a spiritual and energy-based healing paradigm, his passion. In recent years, his work has led him to the mystical threshold of the quantum basis of DNA, its integral connection to the human spirit, and the potential of this awakening knowledge to support human evolution. His goal is to bring this information down to earth so everyone can benefit from the emerging knowledge available in this awakening time. He is an author of Unity Field Healing Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, and he is the founder of Unity Field Healing, a quantum process of conscious DNA activation. And you can find him online at drjohnryan.org and unityfieldhealing.com, and those will be linked from the page where this replay is posted. And so, John, I'm so excited about your topic today, which is the Sacred Mother, Cosmic Portal, Nurturer of Fragile Beauty, and Guardian of the Emerging World. This is so beautiful and so relevant to this fierceness of the mother theme that we have throughout the event here. And so, you know, I think we all see and we all feel that this is happening, that everything is changing, right? And that the earth is really, we're moving into a new way of living and a new way of being in the world, right? And so what does this mean for all of us in the bigger picture, and what is the role of the Divine Mother in this evolution?
Wow, well, that's a big question.
It is.
It's a beautiful topic, Justin. I'm really excited to participate in this conference with the topic of the Divine Mother. It's been very close to my heart and my personal journey. And we often think of the divine feminine through the role of the feminine, but of course it's time to develop an integrated balance. So the beauty of having both men and women discuss the Divine Mother and the role of that energetic overlay is, I think, such a wise and timely and beautiful project. So I really congratulate you on doing that. So as many of the listeners may know, the Earth is in a very special time right now. We're in a time of ascension. And so we're going through a process of integral transformation. It's a transformation of energy, and it's a transformation of consciousness. And to understand the ascension, of course, you have to think a little bit bigger. You have to look at the Earth in a much bigger paradigm of reality and understand that we've been an evolving civilization up until this point in time, and that we've reached a threshold of change. And so really it's a point of maturity. It means that humanity as a collective race is ready to take a step forward into a whole new paradigm of reality. And so it's a graduation, and that brings with it all kinds of uncertainty and transformation and all kinds of mystery. It's a puzzle that has to kind of be examined and figured out, if you will. And so as we go through the time right now, we're birthing a new civilization. And the moment you raise the concept of birthing something new, you realize the inherent role of the divine feminine, because, you know, the the equality of the sexes and the equality of the genders and all of this stuff becomes so paramount in these times of conscious examination and moving into the new energy. But there's one thing that really only women can do, and that is birth. And, you know, it's a really sacred role. It's a sacred trust that is assigned to the feminine, or to the woman of humanity. And so if humanity is birthing a new civilization, you can imagine there's a very divine matrix, a divine mother that's part of that birthing process. And so she, and all of her wisdom and power and healing strength and courage and fierceness, as you say in the title of the topic, is so present and is really behind the scenes of everything that's taking place on the planet right now. For me personally, I had an experience years ago. I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but when I first started to go through my own personal transformation, I had, you know, what's referred to as a Kundalini type awakening. I was having all kinds of unusual energetic experiences. I think I've shared that with you once before. But part of this time for me was I went into this altered state of consciousness once in a meditation. And I had what I would call a shamanic dismemberment, you know, where people will sometimes go through a shamanic experience of dismantling your current reality. And so in this vision, or in, you know, in this state of consciousness, I was floating through the cosmos, and, you know, my whole body was disintegrating. My arms were falling off, and my fingers were falling off, and I was dismantled into like 1,000 pieces. And then all of a sudden I didn't seem to have a body, but I was there in a consciousness state. And out of the fabric of energy of the vision, there was this massive female breast that came forward. And I saw this fetus in energy floating in space. And the bosom of the energy came over the baby and began to feed the baby cosmic energy. Wow. And it was such a powerful vision, and I kind of thought, my heavens, it's, you know, it's so descriptive. It's almost narrative as to what's happening right now in the transformation. All of us are going through this. We're dismantling an old way of being, and we're being born into a brand new way of being that none of us even fully understand yet at this point in time. But it was a beautiful visualization to understand how supported we are, because I could see through the vision. It was a message, if you will, that you're going to be nourished, you're going to be supported, you're going to be taken care of in everything that you have to go through from this day forward. And I kind of locked on to that vision, because I'm sure, like many of your listeners, going through the journey is not always easy. And as you dismantle your 3D reality and your 3D personality and all those kinds of things that are part of the journey, there's lots of ups and downs. And just knowing that that energy and consciousness presence is in the background there, holding us and supporting us and providing us with the energy, the messages, the information, the inspiration, you know, in the background to take us forward step by step, one day at a time, has been nothing short of life-saving, I would say, at times. So that's how I kind of understand the big picture of the Divine Mother, I guess, in the process of ascension.
What a beautiful, powerful vision. I think that's something we can all really carry forward from here. So thank you for sharing that.
It's really my pleasure.
Yeah. So you're speaking about these parts of ourselves we need to dismantle, you know, and that's, it's so powerful, the dismemberment, right? And to acknowledge that that's happening to all of us right now. And so we have limiting beliefs, and we have certain identities that we cling to, or ego constructs. So how can the Divine Mother help us to break up and release things like that?
That's a great question. So it's interesting, because when we think of the word fierceness, we can interpret that word in two ways. You can kind of, you know, go positive or negative, I guess, with the word. So fierceness could be something that is, you know, aggressive or attacking or destructive or angry, or it could be a force of strength that's actually taking, you know, a situation or an individual from one place to another by a very illuminated force of change. And so when we think of fierceness, I see it as strength. I don't see it at all as a negative kind of an energy or concept. It's the strength of change. And the mother would want nothing for her children, of course, except the highest and the best and the greatest good. So sometimes that means change, because what we're doing or what we're living is less than our potential, or it's less than our ideal or optimized state. And because we're being born into this civilization of new potential, we're often dismantling things that are not really bad or negative. They just don't serve a purpose into the future in which we're being born. And so you see lots of people at this point in time, you know, they're changing jobs, or they're restructuring relationships, or forging new friendships and communities, and letting go of other friendships and, you know, old communities, having encounters with religion and spirituality, exposing themselves to all kinds of new ideas and, you know, systems of thought. And so as we go through that, you can't just keep piling on all that new without actually doing a cleaning out. So you have to kind of let go of the, you know, the belief systems, the mental framework, the habits, the patterns that were fine and very supportive in the old energy, but don't serve us as we move into the new energy. And then the other thing, of course, is we all have our own little foibles, if you will, you know, ego attributes or fears, or, you know, habits that we've developed over lifetimes, really multiple lifetimes, that we carry in our own akash. And so the energy of dismantling those is also part of the change, because it wants to bring us to a new vibration where we understand our oneness with nature, our oneness with the earth, our oneness with humanity as a collective species, and actually ultimately our galactic oneness, you know, our oneness with a greater galactic civilization of which we're really a part. And so as we move into that space of oneness and greater, you know, consciousness expansion, we can't stay the same. So much has to be transformed. And so the mother is there in a way to help us see what we need to see. You know, it might be an inspiration of illumination. It might help us see a pattern or a habit. Or it might, you know, if we're being resistant to the change, it might bring us to the point of a crisis of some kind, or an encounter that pushes us to change in a fierce way, a loving way, but in a way of really, really powerful potential. And so it's important, I think, to understand that, because when you look at the world around us right now, it's so chaotic. Like, if you at all tune into the news, and I don't I don't suggest anybody necessarily do that, you kind of see the 3D reality of old surfacing and presenting itself. So we're in a time, because the light is rising and the energy is raising so high, you know, from this birthing process, from the energy coming through the Divine Mother, the, you know, the earth is being pushed into a place where the divine balance of feminine is restored, and the wisdom of the divine feminine is integrated into all aspects of reality, not just family life and relationships, but politics and health and medicine and legal systems and business systems. You know, it's really being brought into the forefront of all these things. But that means all of the elements of the systems that are built on an old 3D energy, a duality energy, competition and greed and all these kinds of things, have to be exposed for what they are, so we can make that transition. And if we go along with it, it actually happens quite easy. But if we fight it, we encounter the resistance. And so there's always this struggle, you know, between, we could say, the struggle between light and dark, or the new and the old. And if you look at life on the 3D screen, it's so obvious that that's taking place. And so much of that we see, I mean, of course, when you look at it on a very superficial level, it's like everything's in conflict, and, you know, this great darkness is being exposed, and, you know, the abuse and political things and business things and this kind of stuff, it's all being exposed and laid on the ground. And it's the fierceness of divine love that's doing that. It's the energy that says there's such a higher potential for humanity, and you're ready for it. So we're pushing ourselves forward. And that resistance that's in the way is a natural tempering force, but we're going to push through all of it and get to a place where all these things are brought into a different alignment, or corrected, if you will, into a higher potential alignment. And that takes a tremendous amount of strength, a tremendous amount of courage, a tremendous amount of dedication, personal will, and, you know, the fierceness that only a mother protecting her young, I think, can really know.
Yes, it really does. It really does. I think I'm so moved by the amount of courage that everybody needs to have right now. You know, if we're paying attention, like everybody who's showing up for these calls and diving deep with us, you know, like that takes tremendous courage and fortitude to really be willing to look at what's truly happening both in the world outside us and within us.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's quite
it
amazing.
really does. Yeah, I mean, it's so unsettling. It brings up fears. It brings up, our own personal inner concerns, and everything fear-based. Really, it brings it to the surface in our own personal lives as well, and just have the courage to step through that. But knowing this, I think we have to have that awareness that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. And so connecting with the divine mother or the divine feminine is such a beautiful thing, because it's the force that's there waiting for us. It's the energy, I believe, that's pulling us through this this birthing canal, and getting us into this new place of being. So.
Yes. Well, could you share a little more about how the divine feminine has played a role in your own personal evolution, and what can we learn from that? How can that help us in our relationship with her?
Wow. So on a personal level, I think I would go back to what I shared just a few moments ago about this shamanic vision that I had back in the day. And it kind of introduced me to the Divine Mother in a way that I didn't even realize I was being introduced to her. It was one of these things out of the scope of my knowledge or reality at the time. And I wasn't a shamanic practitioner. I wasn't, trained in these things. And all of these things just sort of started to happen spontaneously. But I didn't have a cultural frame of reference necessarily to understand what I was living. And so the one thing I learned from that was, whether we know it or not, or whether we trust it or not, the Divine Mother is absolutely there and is watching each and every one of us in our evolution. And so what I would say to the listeners is, know that in the fullness of your heart, that there's this tremendous support that's there with you. You can be conscious about it. You can ask for help. You can ask for support. You can ask to be strengthened in what you're trying to do or achieve or change in your own personal reality. Or if you're building a new project or a new business, the strength, the courage, the tenacity, to really move forward with that. And of course, the intuition and inspiration to see your way. But as I went through my own journey, of course, we're all encountering things that we're reconciling. We have good experiences, perceptively good experiences. We have perceptively bad experiences. A lot of that time in my life, so many things that were part of it began to dismantle. I was in a relationship. I had a beautiful Great Dane at the time, and she passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And I was in one job and it came to an end. And it was like literally a rug was pulled out from under me as I went through this energetic process. It was so reflected in 3D reality that it was shocking. And it was like everything I knew to be me kind of disappeared in a moment in time. And I was left, kind of like a newborn. I had no idea what my my future would be or bring. And so I felt this guiding force, this presence. And I learned through it to trust my intuition. I lived lots of beautiful experiences where the only way out of a conundrum or a situation was to find an answer that I had no rational way of knowing or finding. And it was always through intuitive experiences, and then the synchronicities that would follow those intuitive experiences. It was like I was taken by the hand and brought through the experiences. And I know this is what we're all living right now. We're learning to live in this space where we trust our intuition and follow through and allow the synchronicities that can only be created by following our intuition to happen. We're an active player in the transformation. And so if we don't trust our intuition and follow through, we end up missing our cues. And so life has a harder time responding or bringing us the magic that it's trying so hard to bring us if we're not doing our side of the equation, if you will. So, but even if we miss the cue, it'll keep trying. It'll come back in a new way. We'll get a new intuition. We'll get something new to follow. But I believe behind the orchestration of all this is so much of the divine feminine wisdom that's guiding us. It's guiding our steps. And with that, there's a tremendous softening that takes place. And I come from a more scientific background, but I've always been sensitive and intuitive by nature. So I've kind of had an energy balance going on even before I started living all these things, I guess, in some way. But as I walked through this journey on my own, I realized the absolute need of learning self-care and how we have to honor ourselves, our physical self, our emotional self, our spiritual self, and realize, your physical body is really, it's a 3D anchor. It's a temple in which your soul gets to live and experience the 3D reality. And when you really conceptualize that not just conceptualize it, but cognize it in a way that you know that is 100% real. Not a nice idea or a Facebook meme, but something you have integrated to say, yes, this is really the truth. You know that you have to take care of yourself with wisdom and with love and with compassion. And we're so hard on ourselves as we go through transformation. We all come from a background, I think, where we have lists and goals, and we're trying to always live up to the next bar, and we push ourselves in different ways, whether it's trying to lose weight or be healthier or learn something or whatever. There's this kind of negativity, if you will, or coercion that's part of the energy. But it all changes when you start to think, I'm doing this in honor of life. I'm doing this in honor of my soul. I'm doing this in honor of me. Because you start to make choices from wisdom, and you start to support yourself in a very compassionate and loving way, the way a kind of perfect mother would want to do it, And so you learn to mother yourself, and then the energy of the Divine Mother kind of enters into us and becomes part of who we are, and you integrate it, really. You have to, it's not about knowing it, it's about becoming it, really. That's what it comes down to. And so through the journey in my own life, it's played a tremendous role. And, I can really see the force of the presence of the Divine Mother behind so much of each and every element of my own personal journey and transformation. It just keeps on keeping on. It never goes away.
Yeah, I love this. This is something that has not come up yet in the conversations. The idea of self-care, taking care of our physical, mental, emotional beings, as a way of saying yes to life, right? As a way of saying, I'm doing this to honor life, the life being my own life,
That's right.
We've been talking about this quite a bit in terms of the life of the earth, or the life of the plants and animals, or the life of all the people, but to say I honor life by taking good care of myself, that is so important and so powerful. I'm really glad you brought this up.
It's a beautiful illustration. And I think we learn to love and care externally. Like, we're kind of in the habit of that. We're very good. Most of people involved in the ascension have a role to play in healing or teaching or energy medicine and these kinds of things. And we're naturally in the space of caring about other people and caring about the earth. So you learn to love first transpersonally. And it's strange. You think we would learn to do it the other way around, but because of our culture and I guess the nature of society and what have you, we have to reverse that a little bit. And so people say you have to learn to love yourself. And it's a simple little statement, but entering into the profoundness of what that truly means is fundamental. There's no way of going through the process without learning to do that, for sure.
Yeah, this is so important. And especially for, most of the people or all of the people watching are probably very empathic, very intuitive, very concerned about the needs of all the others around us, So yeah, this is really big, really, really important. Well, so as you mentioned at the beginning, we have women and men here in this conference speaking about the feminine, about the mother. And that was an important part of the download, kind of as it came through to me, for creating this event, was that it should be equal numbers of men and women, speaking in this event. And so I wonder for you, as a man, as a male, right, what do you embody fierceness? How do you embody the fierceness of the mother in your life?
Fierceness of the mother. Well, it goes back to some of the things we were sharing, I think, because first of all, when I started to go through my own personal awakening, I mean, everybody has different terms that we tend to use for this process: the ascension, the awakening, consciousness transformation. They're all pointing in the same direction, or down the same path. But when I started to live it in my own personal way, you have to make decisions to change, and some of them are internal struggles and some of them are external struggles, I guess. So for example, if you're becoming a new person and people know you to be one way, there's a resistance. People want you to stay the same way. So as you change, you run into the friction of people wanting to keep you the way you are. And so one way that the fierceness of the mother shows up is the ability to say, you know, I honor you and I love you, but it's very important that I do what my own spiritual wisdom is saying inside of me. And we have to be strong. So that takes courage, or sometimes you have to stand up fiercely, so to speak, to be willing to do that. Now, fierce is not aggressive or attacking, you know, people around us or whatever. It's not that energy. It's the strength. It's the courage to really be yourself. And that's not easy when you've created a paradigm or a reality where you've kind of told people this is who I am, but now I'm going to be different. So that's one way, you know, that kind of energy shows up. The other is the willingness to make decisions that honor our needs. So, you know, we tend to empty ourselves out and then need to fill up. But as you go through the journey, you learn to be much more in balance. You kind of give yourself what you need on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, so that you're not depleted and you're not, you know, dried up, if you will. And then you need to kind of really overcome and recompensate that state by taking a big break or doing lots of things to kind of nourish yourself or gain balance again. So you learn that means making decisions. It might mean saying no to certain commitments, or shifting activities. You might have been, you know, part of a club, and then that means nothing to you anymore. So you're going to let go, but there be a resistance, and people will try, you know, want to pull you back, but you don't feel it's right for you, so on and so forth. So you see how these little things pop up. And then also within ourselves, we're trying to make changes, and sometimes we're the resistance. You know, like we have within us our own fear, our own resistance to what we know is really right for us, or really what our soul is beckoning us to do, or to develop or create or become. And we have our own fears. We're worried about, it might be what other people think. It might be about fear of failure. It might be fear of judgment. It might be, you know, lack of worth, the sense of who am I to, you know, think that or be that or do that. So we encounter our own demons, if you will, our own fears inside. And you need a lot of tenacity and strength to walk yourself through those. Now, in my experience, that's getting easier. I think people who, like today, the energy is changing so profoundly and so quickly that when people take on the aspiration to do that, what might have taken 5 years before can happen really quickly, I find, in the energy today. So there's such an openness of mind and an openness of potential that's such, it's sort of a subversive realization. Like people are aware of this, not necessarily consciously on the surface, but underneath the surface, people realize, yeah, I can do whatever I want. I can become this, I can become that, I can do something different than I know my reality to be. So I don't find that struggle as big for people, but you still need the support in going through the change and transformation. And so the tenacity of the mother is really there through all of that. It's saying, yeah, you can definitely do this. You have the potential in you. You have to believe in yourself, but that does mean letting go of what you're holding on to. So if it's a fear, you have to walk through it. If it's a belief system, you have to dismantle it, and so on and so forth. So it's everywhere. It's like, it's so pervasive in the healing journey that we could, you know, go on with 100 examples, I think, of ways that it would show up. But I share those few because I think they illustrate a panorama or a scope of how the influence is there and how it helps us in our own personal journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, what you mentioned about how quickly everything is happening now, I find this so fascinating because I see this happening all, you know, in my own life and other people around me, that everything is just so accelerated. And I feel that this, like even this month, July, with these eclipses, just things are happening extremely fast. So what are your thoughts about that? You know, is that just part of the help that we're getting in this ascension process, or how do you view that?
It is. There's a timing that's part of the ascension journey. So, I mean, to discuss the whole scope of it, I guess would take, an hour into itself. But when you step back for a minute, you realize that the 2012 marker, the time marker of 2012, launched the threshold, I guess, of true energetic change. And everything up to that point was kind of a preamble. It was like a getting ready for the big moment. And then slowly since then, every year, the energy is accelerating in an almost exponential way. And so the 2013 year was a real rough year for many people. It was almost like everybody felt unplugged and didn't know what to do. And we were all kind of fumbling around trying to figure out what was happening in our lives and in consciousness and energy. But then starting in 2014, 2015, you saw this momentum start to build. And so we're now 2019, 2020. We just went through an eclipse yesterday, which is a real powerful eclipse. It's kind of like the bulldozing everything within us that needs to be drawn out to help us really embody and integrate our soul. And so over the next 2 years, people who've been at the forefront of this movement or this wave of ascension are going to powerfully embody the soul aspect or the soul element of their own personal reality. And the soul is multidimensional in the sense that, it's aware of this lifetime, it's aware of other lifetimes, it's aware of greater potential, it's aware of our ultimate greater purpose, our collective purpose, how we support each other in groups and communities, and so on and so forth. And so as we embody this more profoundly over the next year or two, it's going to really create powerful change. And so when you start to think, well, what would that look like? Well, when we look at the avatars or the spiritual teachers that have come over time, they've been able to do all kinds of things that we see as miraculous. They defy physics, they defy science, they defy even modern understandings of these things, even though they happened in a day where that kind of education was not part of reality. And so, but if they happened today, if somebody walked in and did a laying on of hands and healed somebody, it would be as miraculous today as it was 2,000 years ago. But these kinds of things are going to start becoming commonplace. Like you're going to see that kind of evolution. People are going to have a wisdom that's innate, it's present with them. There's a sense of guidance and intuition that's with you all the time, helping you make decisions, inspiring you in the right direction for your own soul's purpose. It's going to teach you to say yes to those things and not no to the things you're afraid of, and so on and so forth. So you'll see it seep in slowly over the next period of time. Part of that is transforming the energetic nature of the human body. And so when your body is a vessel to live in a 3D reality, and now you're going to be living in a multi-dimensional reality, there's a whole rewiring framework. It's like you have to build up a whole new energy system. And people, of course, refer to that as the light body or the Merkaba, or the Merkaba vehicle. And so that integration, it can't happen all at once because it would be overwhelming to the circuitry of the human body. So it's happened, that part of the integration is happening over the course of several years. And many people are at a point now where they're really ready to plug in and come online, if you will. And so a lot of the human changes, the ascension symptoms, the fatigue, all the things that are part of that change for people going through that element of the journey will start to settle down slowly. And the energy will really be able to step in a more powerful way. That's my belief anyway, and my experience. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that description. It's it just feels like such a powerful time, and I feel like our abilities are heightening, and it's really, really amazing to be alive at this time and be able to witness all of it,
Yeah, it's true.
It really is. Well, I have one more question for you, and I think it's so fascinating, your background as a physician, that you've been trained as a medical doctor, and then you had this awakening process, and now you are doing this beautiful work around energy healing and ascension. And so I wonder how has the Divine Mother maybe influenced your work or played a part in that?
Okay. So I'll start the answer to that question back in time. Because to really understand the work I do personally, it's connected to the DNA. And so when I was first starting to go through my own personal awakening, I was drawn to learn about energy medicine and the chakras and, all the things which so many of us today are familiar. It's second nature to know these concepts and experiences. And, but, I went through a period of learning about these things in a very 3D way, like reading books or doing workshops, doing healing seminars, these kinds of things. And slowly I started to have visionary experiences. And I was shown that what we're living through this ascension process is a reintegration of a DNA template. And when I first was presented with this work, I wasn't sure what I was being shown. I was being shown, this big DNA molecule that was an energy molecule, and it was full of all kinds of life forms that were lifetimes for an individual soul, and so on. And so I had to kind of dismantle the information. It's when you're being taught through visionary experiences or through energy and consciousness, you kind of get a download of information that might come as a vision or, a big conscious intuition. But then you kind of have to decode it. Like you have to sit with the information and figure out the symbolism and, what it's really trying to convey. And what I didn't understand at the very beginning of this was that really what I'm working with in this energy system is the 24th chromosome. And so, people may be aware that as humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. There's 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs of chromosomes that make up the human body. But at the beginning, when humanity was seeded with divinity, at the very beginning, so we're going back now to the time of Lemuria and the Pleiadian arrival of consciousness and the Pleiadian mothers who came to the planet, there was a fusion of two chromosomes so that the 24 pairs of physical chromosomes were turned to 23. So chromosome 2 was a double chromosome or a fused chromosome. And there's still a 24th pair of chromosomes, but they're quantum. So this big energy DNA that I was being shown, I've come to understand more recently, is really this energy chromosome. It's the 24th pair of chromosomes. And so the ascension process is rewiring this energy between the chromosome, the quantum DNA, and the human DNA, and this current expression as a life form. So while we're alive is this physical person in this 3D reality, we're being wired up to the DNA in a way that will re-expose us to the multidimensional nature of our consciousness matrix. And so the unity field healing work that I do, I was shown a light template to work to support this integration of energy. So it's kind of like rewiring or recalibrating the energy system to really support in a personal way the ability to go through that ascension process. And so it is something that is spontaneous. It's not something that people actually need treatments to do or need processes to do per se. But the processes are kind of like tools, and they make it quicker, or they make it easier, or they make it simpler, I think, for people to go through the process. And so unity field healing work, the work that I was kind of found, where the system that I founded, I was shown through a series of visions. So people interested in that can read, I won't go into the details of that, but you can read about it on the website. And I was basically developed a system of sessions that you do in a hands-on table format way, or, at a distance kind of a session. And you can support the energy for an individual in moving into this integrated state where the DNA and the physical DNA are more woven together and the channels of energy have opened between them. And so it's a long answer, but that's kind of the short of that answer. So in the process of doing that, one of the things that happened was I had a conversation, if you will, in meditation with my own Pleiadian mother. And she told me that the work that we're doing is a reintegration of this fabric. But then a series of light beings came in the meditation and told me that they're the actual light beings, if you will, or the spiritual system that stands behind the work to support it. And they refer to themselves as the Syrian Blue-White Collective. And so it's a consciousness group of healers that work very specifically with quantum DNA processes and are here in a conscious way now to really start supporting humanity. So it's kind of like a landing, if you will, a visitation from an interstellar civilization. But the consciousness of the light beings from these other places do sometimes show up physically in the world, but for the most part, they come in channeled form or in meditations. But when you start working with the systems, you feel the energy support that's there. And I believe that's why this work is so powerful. Like the experiences that people have had with it are unbelievable, like incredible, incredible things. So, and I really credit it to the whole galactic network of energy and consciousness that's working to support us, and the mother behind it all. So.
Yeah, amazing. Just amazing. And well, I know that for your free gift, you are offering a chance for 3 people to win access to that Unity Field Healing program. So can you say a few more words about that?
Sure, yeah. So the work can be done in 2 different ways. It can be done by a hands-on session. So if you're in person, it's kind of done on a massage table where you lay down and do the energy session. But the way the work was first developed was in an audio-guided program. And so there are 3 guided meditations. And so the meditations are my own voice. I've vocally recorded the energy session, and we go on a journey together in the meditation. And then the energy responds to the meditation, and you go through the session in an audio-guided format. And so there's 3 sessions that are part of the work. Session 1 is self-attunement. Session 2 is an attunement to the light template that's part of the work. And then session 3 is called targeted intentional support. And this is for working with specific issues that an individual may encounter in their own journey. So for example, if you recognize you're stuck in some way, or you're encountering a physical illness or a psychological experience that's challenging in some way, you can go into session 3 with an intention, and then the energy work responds to the intention that you've invoked at the beginning of the experience. So the package is the 3 audio-guided meditations. And so for people who submit, I will draw 3 people to be given the session package as a gift.
Wonderful. Thank you for that very generous free gift.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and so for everyone who's on live with us, I just put the link to enter for that free gift in the chat. And for everyone who's watching this later as a recording, just scroll down below the video screen and you will see the link there. So yeah, I encourage everybody to go and claim that gift, enter to win that gift. It's really powerful. Yes. So, well, with that, I think we will open up the lines for the audience Q&A. So for everybody who would like to ask Dr. John Ryan a question, go ahead and you can either raise your hand and we can bring you over with video, which is great, or if you want to turn off your video, we can bring you over audio only to ask a question, or you can always put a question in the chat if you prefer to ask that way. So go ahead and submit your questions now. And I am just looking through the chat to see if there are any other questions that came up earlier. Juliet was just commenting on our global birthing process that is so clearly happening in all of the world events. And Deborah has a beautiful comment here for you. She says, John, you have a very lovely, gentle manner in which you share your sacred experiences. One of my jobs as a medical role player for doctors preparing for their board exams, part of my role is to express something personal while they're asking me questions to help the doctors tap into and remember their empathic natures. Wonderful. So yes, she's saying thank you for being such a role model for this. Wonderful. Okay, I don't see any questions yet. I know you all have questions.
We have a very wise group, you see.
Yes.
They have all the answers.
Yes. So here's one from Pamela.
Yeah.
Could you speak further about the galactic connection with Sirius? I think
Sure.
it was.
Yeah. So interesting for me. This part of my work is actually new for me.
Mm.
I've been doing the work for about 4 years, and I had no idea that this group of light beings had actually anything to do with the process. And I encountered them in a meditative process, and they came forward like an array of light beings, and they came forward and they explained to me. They had a DNA strand with a pyramid of light around the strand, and they stood around behind it in an array. And what they shared with me was they work with DNA, quantum DNA, and it really, in the times of ascension, when planetary systems are going through the ascension process, they're very, very active, if you will. They come in to work in a supportive way with the DNA transformation. And so the beings that I've seen working, they take two forms for me. There's these light beings that look like tall, luminous beings. They don't really have a face, but they have the form, a humanoid form, but they're really made of light, and like a golden white light with a radiance of light around them. And there's a blue quality to the white light. So the blue-white collective, I think, is very apt. The other thing that will happen sometimes in the sessions is there's a big dolphin consciousness that comes in. I had a beautiful experience once doing the session, and in my third eye vision, this dolphin swam into the vision and stood right in the middle of my head. And it was like he came up, he was on skates, and he stopped really short. And he turned around and he winked at me and he said, "I got this."
Wow.
And he started swimming inside the DNA of the client that I was working with.
That's amazing.
And I know a lot of people make a connection between dolphin and whale consciousness and the Syrians, and I do believe that it's an integral part of the energy and the transformation. And that's a whole other topic, the whales and dolphins. We'll have to do a seminar on that, Jocelyn.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
But the consciousness that comes from the Syrian collective, when I feel them, you feel the ascended state of these beings. There's a radiance that comes, and it's beyond words. It's kind of like this field of love and energy and power and wisdom. And it's almost like you feel the sun shining. It's an energy that's so palpable that you feel it come into your body and you feel it come into the space. And so I think it's the beginning of working with intergalactic systems. Like we're a galactic family. I mean that when I say that, there's the Pleiadians and the Syrians, and I know this is kind of esoteric and maybe new information for some people to think about, but it is how it came to me, and I can only say what's true or what I've experienced. And so when they come to me, I recognize them as a profoundly wise collective of beings. They are healers by nature. They can work interdimensionally. They can work between 3D and energetic reality with a great facility. And so you feel their presence come into the space. People have seen them physically, people who have clairvoyant vision working with us when we're doing the trainings and the sessions. Mm-hmm. But most people don't see, but they certainly will feel. I don't think I've trained anybody yet who's not had a palpable experience of feeling their energy when it comes into the process. And so they're starting to introduce themselves to us slowly, and they're revealing information, and they're really joining us in a way of presence. They're kind of coming and being with us in the things we're learning to do. And so they're very supportive. There's a parental kind of an attitude about it. Like they have a wisdom, they have a strength, they know more than we know. And you feel all of those things as they're with us. And so you learn to trust working with them. And so it's new that if you think about it, we always, if people are, into UFO phenomena and, visitations from, beings from other star systems and that kind of stuff, it would only make sense that the first way they would introduce themselves to us is in this format, through quantum consciousness. So a lot of people are having these kinds of experiences. So to me, they're a beautiful, obviously ascended, wise energy. And they have a lot of wisdom about healing, particularly about the DNA and the quantum integration part of the DNA. And I feel a very deep affiliation with the whales and dolphins through the Syrian connection.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. There's a question from Simone. Can you expand more on the 24th chromosome? what is its specific function? And Juliet is also asking about that.
So I think we'll just take a step back to answer that question. So as mammals on the planet, all mammals have 24 pairs of chromosomes. Humans have 23. When we were seeded with divine consciousness, in other words, when we went from being part of nature to being the human species with self-divine awareness, in other words, a divine being aware of its divinity, that came with the integration of the quantum aspect of DNA, that is the connection between the physical being and the spiritual element of reality. So there's like a bio-spiritual continuum. And so we're here in a body with 23 chromosomes that we use to function, to be healthy in our body, to do all the things our body needs to do and heal and so on and so forth. But this quantum 24th chromosome is an interface with the spiritual element of our reality. So in the information in that 24th chromosome is so profound. It can't even be fully conceptualized in 3D words. But really what it is, it's an interface. It's a system of energy that's overlighting or governing, kind of like a Wi-Fi connection, if you will, between this quantum energy space and the 3D physical body. But as you access the energy of the 24th chromosome, you start to become aware of your multidimensional nature. So as a soul, many of us today realize that, reincarnation is a reality. And it's not, a theoretical concept. People have had vivid past life memories, or they've done healing of things in their present reality by accessing things in their past. And so when you enter or interface with this chromosome, you go into this space where everything you've ever been or done as a soul on the planet is there in a quantum storage. Wow. So it contains your Akashic memory. And so the first thing you kind of run into is this greater than oneself consciousness. You become aware of yourself as a spectrum of beings, and you've had many lifetimes. But you also start to become aware of your galactic connection and how humanity is part of a galactic family, and how you, as a member of humanity, are part of this greater galactic family. And it takes you back to the connection to your higher self, the element of consciousness that's you before you individuate into, fragments or human beings, human experiences. And so you start to become aware experientially of your divine essence. You realize that when people say things like God is inside you, that's a nice concept. Again, it's a Facebook meme, it's a nice phrase to hear, and it's reassuring to hear that. But you start to realize that is absolutely 100% unequivocally the truth. And you feel that light, you feel the energy, you feel that wisdom, that connection. So this whole interface between the human being and the whole divine reality of the human being is through this 24th chromosome. As the energy or the connection to it is enhanced, then you access things within your physical body that were limited before. So you can imagine if you had like a connection that was operating at 30%, it would be hard for the body to heal. It would be hard for balance to be restored. So as the energy grows and that connectivity is enhanced, healing that's really mystical or kind of unusual can start to happen, because the energy wants to come in and create the balance that's the foundational necessity for the healing to take place. And all healing happens inside out that way. It's the energy inside is transformed, and then you can manifest a different physical experience. So that's kind of how healing ties into the 24th chromosome or the quantum DNA pictures. A big answer, but I tried to cover pertinent information.
Yes, thank you for sharing all of that. Let's see what other questions. So there's one here from Juliet asking about timelines. So I haven't heard you speak about timelines, but if you are open to that, here's a question.
Okay.
She's saying, in relation to a spiral, past, present, future timeline, and connecting, I think this is connected to the comment above. So she's curious about the DNA 24th quantum chromosome in relation to a spiral, past, present, future timeline and connecting with the future as we manifest it? That sounds like a big question.
Okay, let me see. I'm going to actually, rather than listen to the words, I'm going to try to tune into the energy.
Okay.
So before the ascension, you can think of it this way. You were born, you were going to live a life. There was a program in that life. So in other words, when you were going to be born as a child, at a spiritual level of consciousness, you would come, you would choose your parents, you would choose the energy that you're going to take on for that lifetime, the potentials. If you were going to work on karmic attributes that you wanted to heal, you'd kind of soup up an energy that you would bring with you for an incarnational experience. And you'd go through the loop and you'd come back to the end and you would pass over. And that experience would be like a ring. So the time would have a beginning and an ending, and the end of the life would mark that change. With the ascension, what's happening is we're opening the ring. So instead of going back to the end of that life, we're actually being born into a new incarnation while we're in the physical body. So it's like we're breaking from a ring to a spiral, and the spiral is an ascent. And it goes higher and higher because the vibration is going up. And so through that ascent, we're going to come across energies that are similar to what we would have encountered in the original ring, but it's always at an octave or a level that's a little bit higher. And so we're going to go through a spiral of consciousness and energy. And it's that process that's raising our human experience, or raising the vibration, or raising the foundational energy of what it is to be in the body. So I believe that's the answer to the question, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I have a question then
Okay.
about that. That is very fascinating. And Juliet, before I ask this next thing, Juliet, let us know if that was in the realm of what you were looking for. But so I have a question. I have not heard this before, and this is really fascinating that we are. So you said, if I understand correctly, we're moving into a new incarnation, but without dying.
Correct.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is, in my personal experience recently, along with feeling that everything is happening so fast, I have had this experience where I'm like meeting very different people than I've ever come across before in my life, like people from completely different walks of life than I've ever known. Right. And new experiences, just all these new things coming in. So I wonder if that is related. I don't know. It sprung into my mind,
Absolutely, yes. So
fascinating.
if you think about it, when something that people may or may not realize is, when we were born, if you were born, like say before 1980, well, certainly before 1975, if you were born in a time frame a little older than that, when you were born, you absolutely knew the earth has two possible futures. And we didn't actually know which way it would go. And so when we arrived at 1987, what's termed the Harmonic Convergence, it was a point of measurement of energy and consciousness, if you will. You can think of it that way, like a barometer. And so in 1987, we had to kind of assess whether humanity would be able to undergo a transformation into an ascended civilization or an ascended consciousness, if it was mature enough, spiritually speaking, to be able to go through that awakening. And so it's like measuring the love quotient of humanity. How evolved are they? And are they able to take on this transformation? Because it's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of work and challenge in doing that, as we're all discovering, right? So the option would be that the earth would not have continued, or civilization would not have continued. So a lot of people had this memory or this awareness that the earth could either ascend or collapse. And so that may be a big war or a nuclear holocaust or something to bring civilization down, or go through the ascension and begin to raise consciousness up to a higher level of reality. And so I believe personally, from many things I've lived in my own experiences, that that's the truth. And that we've opted now for this second path. We're going through the ascension process. But that actually means your life is not going to end the way you planned when you were born. It's going to end by creating this new version of reality that's only being created as we do it now. So that the end of that lifetime was unknown, because it's going to depend on the choices we make and how the energy unfolds and so on through this next period of time. So the life that we were born into kind of collapses, and then we begin this process of a new reality. And I think everybody can relate to that in a very personal way. Like, yeah. I bet if you ask for a show of hands, how many people are living the same life today that they were living 20 years ago or 30 years ago? And people have gone through these stages, these metamorphoses through that time where they've continuously been transforming into a different kind of a person. And that wasn't the way of things 100 years ago. Like if we think back to our own personal immediate ancestors, you know, they were born, they lived families, they had a farm, or they fished, or they did whatever they did. They had a little unit. For the most part, it was a very stable reality, and not much changed from beginning to end once it was all put into place. Mm-hmm. But that's not the human experience
that's
today.
Not what we're having now.
3 relationships and 2 jobs and move 6 times and learn things they didn't even know about when they were like 10 years younger or 20 years younger and so on. Yeah. So it's nice to stop and realize that, because you'd see in a very tangible way how true it is that everything is changing, and how we are changing, and how we're really stepping into this place that something unbelievably magic is starting to happen and take place on the planet. There's never been a more exciting time to be alive on the planet Earth.
This is so inspiring. I just love this. Love what you're sharing. Yeah. Let's see. Well, do you have time for one more question? I know We're at the hour now, so
that's okay. I'm okay.
One more. Okay. So Helen is saying, do you think that it's possible that someone could have not had any past lives, that this could be their first?
It's a beautiful question. And the answer to it is yes. So now, the vast majority of human beings who are interested in these kinds of things, so, you know, interested in healing, interested in spiritual topics, interested in ascension, energy, planetary transformation, all these kinds of things. The vast majority, like 99% majority of these kinds of people, are what you would call an old soul. And what an old soul is a soul that's been on the planet for many, many, many years and has lived many incarnational experiences. So, for example, you are an old soul. I am an old soul. It's clear in consciousness as I speak to you and, you know, get to share time with you. I see your wisdom, and I see the many layers of human understanding that you have evolved as a soul. So it's easy to recognize an old soul because they carry wisdom, they carry compassion, they carry an attitude that's balanced and peaceful and wise in different ways. And so all of our listeners out there are in this group of people. They've lived many lifetimes, a vast majority. Now, since 2012, with this ascension energy, there are spiritual beings who are coming to the planet who've not lived on the earth before. Some of them have been here a few times. Some of them are brand new and it's their first time. But they've always been part of the system. They've just never incarnated as a human being up until this point in time. And a lot of these people do have, you know, galactic connections, or they, you know, there are people who do past life regressions, for example, and they run into memories in Lyra or Sirius or other stellar civilizations, and they have memories of being in these places and how different life is on the earth. But a lot of these souls are coming with a certain vibration or a certain element of energy or wisdom. And if you kind of think of the earth as a mosaic, it's time to bring in some of these new energies to the earth to really help move it forward into what we're becoming. So we see a big transformation in the children. You know, people talk about the indigo kids and the crystalline kids and the rainbow kids and all the other kids. There's a whole, you know, panorama of descriptive titles that go along with these. But you see how children are changing and how humans being born today are uniquely different. And many of them are still old souls who are coming back through a new energy system. So things are different, and they're different in the system because of the energy changes. But there are some beings who are relatively new or brand new. So yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for all that you have shared. This has been really fun and very uplifting. And lots of people are saying in the comments, this is very affirming and inspiring and uplifting. It's really, really helpful to have these insights with all that's happening in our world right now. So I want to thank you from my heart.
Really, my pleasure so much, Jocelyn. Thank you from my heart and from the heart of the Divine Mother.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks to all the listeners too. It's really beautiful to share time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to everybody who has attended live and added your comments and questions here. This is really a wonderful, wonderful community that has come together. And thank you also to all those who are listening to this as a recording. I hope you will love it and be very inspired. And so, yeah, well, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, sending lots of love and blessings out to everybody. And many blessings to you, John. It's such a pleasure to work with you, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
Very mutual.
Thank you.